What's up, it's Sora. Welcome back to my channel. And if you're someone who's really looking to build their units, if you're new to Genshin and you want to know how you can build each unit to do as much damage as possible to, be the best selves that they can be, then this is the video for you. In this video, I will teach you how to build each unit according to their own needs and how to make them as strong as you possibly can. If you could give this video a like, subscribe, comment down below anything you would like. The comment section is yours, and let's jump right in. So when it comes to building a unit, we'll do Raiden Shogun for example. There are a lot of factors that go into play, and when you're first starting out, or if you're someone who's played very casually for a while, and you're only now starting to take this seriously, it may be confusing at first, but over time, it all just starts to make sense. As you can see, you have your attributes, you have weapons, artifacts, constellation, talents, and profile. Don't worry about your profile, this is just personal stuff. You can listen to their voiceovers and whatnot. Attributes. This is where you will be looking to check everything. Check your HP, check how much attack, how much defense, EM, stamina. You hit details and it'll pull up more advanced stats. You can check your crit rate, your crit damage, healing bonus, ER, your elemental damage bonuses and resistances and whatnot, so on and so forth. Now, the first step to building a unit is to go into their talents, look through their talents, see what they do, see what they scale off of. You just basically need to know what this unit is designed to do. That way you know how to build them to do exactly that. For example, we're going to take an extreme case here, Yelan. Now, Yelan is an off-field hydro damage dealer. A sub-DPS, if you will. There's a lot of things you can call it. But Yelan, she has her normal attacks, which she'll just shoot her bow. It's no elemental damage. She's just shooting her a bow, doing normal attacks. This scales off of attack. As you can see, it's just regular multipliers. Unless something is specified, it is attack. Okay? That means it scales off of this attack stat, which means that if I were to do one shot from her bow, it would do 55.3% of this number here. And then that damage goes through other calculations such as enemy resistances and all types of other stuff, crit rate, crit damage, all that good stuff. But that's basically all you need to know. When it is specified what it scales off of, for example, her breakthrough barb. Now let me just demonstrate. So this is her normal attack. As you can see, she's just attacking. There's no elements going on. She's just shooting her bow, doing damage. Her breakthrough barb, as you can see, her bracelet is glowing. That's her indicator. And when you charge up her bow, as you can see, she has that little aura going on. And when she fires it, it'll shoot out and do AoE hydro damage. AoE means area of effect. So she does hydro damage in an area off of her bow. Now that hydro damage scales off of her max HP. Then if we take a look at her elemental skill, she'll basically, dash around enemies that, get caught up in it, get tied up in her rope, and once she's done, she'll pull on it, and it'll deal hydro damage to the enemies that got caught. If we take a look at her skill, we can see that it also scales off of max HP. Her burst, I don't want to waste it, but it is what it is. She goes into her burst, and as she attacks, the dice beside her will unleash coordinated hydro attacks that deal hydro damage. This hydro damage from her burst scales off of max HP, which means that to build Yelan to do damage off of her barb, off of her skill, off of her burst, which is what you're using her for, you want to stack HP, not attack, because the only thing on her that scales from attack are her physical damage multipliers. As I said before, that is when she's just shooting her bow, wait for her burst to run out. That's when she's just shooting her bow. Boom. And that's not what you're using her for. She's a hydro damage dealer. You want the hydro damage. You want her doing hydro damage. Not physical damage, not normal attacks. That isn't the core of how she is designed. So attack is pretty much useless because everything in her kit that actually does damage that's worth focusing on scales from her HP. Which means that if you want to build your Yelan, you want to build her with HP. So how exactly do you do that? When building a unit, there are two things that come into consideration. A weapon and 5 artifacts. Constellations also matter, but each unit's constellations kind of enhance them. It gives them extra abilities, unlocks certain stuff that you normally wouldn't be able to do without them. Now, for example, I have a C1 Yelan, which gives her an additional charge of her skill, which is why, if you look at the bottom, it has 2 blue diamonds above it, which means I can use her skill once, and then I can use it again. Without C1, you only get 1 charge. You would just use it 1, and then you'd have to wait for the cooldown to run out, and then you can use it again. So, how would I go about building Yelan? You would want to look at her weapons and her artifacts, as I mentioned before. I recommend starting with artifacts. While you can start with a weapon, it's more important to start with the artifacts since they tend to, artifacts always give the bigger damage increase, and you want to build her with her artifacts, the strongest artifacts possible, and then give her a weapon, or give whoever you're building a weapon that synergizes with that. So, let's take a look. Now, when it comes to artifacts, you get 5 artifact slots. You get a flower, you get a feather, you get a sands or a timepiece, you get a goblet, and you get a circlet. Now, your flower will always have an HP stat. Always, no matter which flower I click on, no matter how many, the main stat will always be HP. For a character like Yelan, this is important because she scales off of HP. So you want to make sure that you max out her feather as soon as possible. For their feather, this will always have an attack main stat. No matter which feather I click on, no matter how much the attack is, it will always be attack. For your sands, now your sands, you have a lot more variety. If you need to look at your options, you can click here. Well, this doesn't really help, but your sands will always have stats like HP percent. You could have ER, you could have attack, you could have defense sands, EM sands, HP, attack, EM, ER, defense, and that's it. Your goblet basically factors in everything from your sands, and then in addition, you also gain damage bonuses. So you can have, for example, an EM sands, you can also have an electro damage bonus sands, geo damage bonus sands, animal damage bonus sands, pyro damage bonus sands. So depending on which character you're using and how you want to use them, you would want to give them an elemental goblet. Oh, I've been saying sands. Whoops, I meant to say goblet. You want to give them an elemental goblet that matches them. For example, as you can see, my Yoimiya has a pyro damage bonus goblet because she deals pyro damage. Now, for a character like Yelan, where's her goblet? I have her on a hydro damage bonus goblet because, as you can see, I have her on an HP sands and an HP circlet. And while I could go triple HP, and I could be wrong for this, I think having HP, and hydro damage bonus balances out a little bit more. That way she naturally has some damage bonus of her own. I could be wrong. However, your circlet is probably your most important artifact. Depending on who you're building, depending on who you're building. But for a lot of damage dealers, for a lot of people who want to do as much damage as possible, your Circlet has the same stats as your Sands. They don't have the elemental bonuses and physical damage bonuses of your Goblet, but instead you gain access to crit rate and crit damage. This is very important because when you deal damage, you have a % chance that it will score a critical hit. And a critical hit will deal more damage based on your crit damage. If I were to score an attack with Yelan and it were to crit, it would deal this much % more damage. So basically double. So let's do just some rough calculations here. We're going to ignore enemy resistance and elemental damage bonuses and all that yada yada, just rough damage. Her skill does 36.2% of her max HP. Her max HP is 35,168 times 0.362. This means that her skill should deal roughly around 12,000 damage. We'll round it down. 12,000 damage. Now, if she were to crit, it would be increased by this much, so I would multiply it. So if she were to crit, it would deal an additional 13,000 damage. So when you add all of that together, she's now doing 25k off of her skill if she were to crit. And this is why you want to make sure that for damage dealers, you have enough crit rate and crit damage to ensure that you are critting and that you're critting for as much as possible, because at this point it's just free damage. And that's what makes your Circlet important. Now that I've explained all of these, let's go into artifacts, because there are multiple artifact sets, each one's with their own special abilities, doing their own things. Heart of Depth. It gives a 15% hydro damage bonus, and then after using an elemental skill, it'll increase your normal attack and charged attack damage by 30% for 15 seconds. So if you're building a hydro unit that does a lot of normal attacks or charged attacks, such as Ayato or Child if you have him, this is a good set for them. Now, it may not be their best set because, again, each unit is different. Each unit has their own special needs, their own, special things that they do. So, not all sets are universal. However, while it may not be their best set, that doesn't take away from the fact that it is still a good one. For Yelan, I have her on a 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. That way, I can keep her burst up. She has plenty of energy recharge to ensure that her burst is up off cooldown. That means I burst. By the time that cooldown ends, her burst is ready for me to go again. I burst again. She's literally dealing as much damage as she possibly can. Because at the end of the day, no matter who you are, we're all fighting cooldowns. So there's that. Again, she is HP scaling. So we want that flower maxed out. And on her substats, we want ER to, make sure that she really has enough ER to get her burst up. Not to mention, the 2-piece set gives 20% energy recharge bonus. The 4-piece set will increase your elemental burst damage by 25% of your your energy recharge. This means that the more energy recharge that I stack on her, the more her burst is going to be increased damage-wise. We have crit damage because we want to crit, and we want to crit for as much as possible. And then we have this attack stat. Couldn't do anything about that, unfortunately. But we got a lot of crit, we got ER. Unfortunately, not that much HP, but she is HP scaling, so we want HP %. We look at her feather, more ER, more crit damage, more HP, more crit rate, all things that she wants. Sands, I have her on HP Sands. She is HP scaling. Defense does nothing for her, bad roll. Flat HP, this is bad. When it comes to flat HP, and flat attack, flat defense, these do not get factored in to percentages. So you see this HP percent here? This HP percent is not going to take a percentage of her HP with this HP in mind added in. It's going to take a percentage of her HP and then add this on at the end, which is much less bang for your buck. You are not getting nowhere near as much HP as you could, or attack, or defense from that. So this is always bad. The only reason she even has this piece is because of the crit damage. The second I get a better piece, I will be getting rid of this one. Sometimes when you're building characters, you have to settle. Sometimes you have to settle for the meantime until you get something better. I have her on a Hydro Damage bonus goblet because she does Hydro Damage. Hydro Damage bonus means that her Hydro Damage just does more damage. Free damage. Crit damage, crit rate, that defense is useless on her. HP, she's HP scaling. I have her on an HP circlet. We have Elemental Mastery, which isn't useless on her, depending on which team you're using her in. A lot of the time, Yelan's being used in like a Taser team or Vape or whatnot. These teams deal a lot of elemental reactions. Elemental Mastery increases your the damage of your elemental reactions. So while it's not what she's shooting for, it's not the worst thing to have. More ER, attack, useless on her. Attack percent also useless because again, she is fully HP scaling. Now if we take a look, you can look at your artifact details and see just exactly what you're getting from your artifacts. From my artifacts alone, I got 17,000 more HP. Good. She scales with HP. As you can see, this value is much larger than any of these. Well, these three, and that's good. I got 11.5 crit rate and 61.7 crit damage. Now, I have so little crit rate from my substats because I don't have a crit rate circlet, which means the only crit rate I'm getting is from my substats because, as I mentioned before, you can't get crit rate from any of these pieces, only the circlet. And I chose to go for an HP circlet because she's HP scaling. I wanted to boost her damage even further. No crit rate on this piece. Only 5.3 on that piece. None on that piece. Only 6.2 on that piece. None on this piece. So non-existent crit rate. This is where the weapon comes in. Your weapon should make up for what your artifacts could not. Since I have plenty of ER, I have HP, I have, all that stuff under control for my artifacts alone. The main thing I need is crit rate, and that's why I chose Slingshot. I have it at level 70. Don't worry about the base attack. Again, she's HP scaling. That doesn't do anything for her. Crit rate. That's what we need. Now, I also have the Viridescent Hunt, but at level 70, for some strange reason, it gives less crit rate than this 3-star bow. And this is a 4-star bow that you can only literally purchase. I'm a little confused by that because I actually picked this bow. I got this bow for her because it was like, okay, it has crit rate. Once I level it up, it should be an upgrade. It is not. The only upgrade it has is base attack. If I were to put this on someone who scales with attack, for example, maybe Ganyu or Yoimiya, maybe. Not really, but you get what I mean, like characters who like attack, it would probably yield better results. But since all I care about is the crit rate, we're going to go for this weapon. The passive, it increases her normal and charge attack damage, which is, it's fine because that means I can do a little bit of physical damage with Yelan. I can actually use her normal attacks because normally you don't have a lot of attack. You're not really using them, but the bow increases her normal attack damage. So in the event that I do feel like, just shooting down an enemy real quick, I can do that. And so this is the end result. 35k HP, 61 to 111. Now when it comes to crit rate and crit damage, you should always shoot for a 1-to-2 ratio, which means that for every point of crit rate, you should have 2 of crit damage. So 50 crit rate, 100 crit damage. That's good. A 1-to-2 ratio. And the game even incentivizes this. If you look, for example, at a maxed out crit damage circlet, it gives 62.2% crit damage at level 20. But if you look at a maxed out crit rate circlet, level 20, it only gives 31.1%, which is literally half of this. So even the game incentivizes a 1-to-2 ratio. So just run along with that. Now, some characters aren't built for damage. For example, Zhongli. He is here to provide shielding and defensive support. When you look at his skill, he basically puts up a shield that scales off of his max HP. It has a base absorption and then an additional absorption based on a percentage of his max HP. Now, it does other things, but I'm not going to get too deep into that. I just want to show that, for example, my Zhongli has no crit rate whatsoever. Barely any crit damage, not that much ER, and that's because he's not here to do damage. So there's nothing for him to crit in the first place. He doesn't really need to have his burst up. Again, I don't need him doing damage. I don't need him to do his burst. I need him to get on the field, put up his shield, get off. So I've invested into making that shield as strong as possible. Now this isn't to say that Zhongli can't do damage. I mean, he doesn't really, aside from his burst, and you can do physical Zhongli if you so choose to. His burst, does have a really high multiplier, so you could build into that if you want, but me personally, I just want a shield. His shield scales with HP, his artifacts, 4-piece tenacity. It increases his HP, gives a 20% attack bonus to nearby party members. It increases his shield strength. It can be triggered when he's not on the field. When he puts up his shield, he summons a Geo Pillar that will stay on the field even when he's not present. It will resonate, dealing Geo damage, which means that he can keep this passive up. Off field, constant attack buff, constant shield strength buff. HP is increased. His weapon, I went for more HP on the substat. I don't care about that. I don't care about the attack. I just want the HP. And 35k HP. His shield is strong. So when it comes to building your units, you have to know exactly what they do, what you want them to do, and how exactly to get them to do that. And when it comes to talents specifically, for example, let's look at my Shogun. I have her burst crowned. Level 10 is the maximum level you can reach. It takes a lot of investment. Her burst is the bulk of her damage. It is the bulk of her kit. And so when you level a talent, as you can see, I'm just at level 1 because she is not physical. She is not a physical damage dealer. There's no reason for me to be on the field with her doing physical damage because you put down her skill, you swap off to someone else, it'll do coordinated electro damage alongside that person, and then when her burst is ready, she gets on, she bursts. When she's done bursting, you put her skill back up, you get her off the field, you start the cycle again. There's no reason for me to use this, and so I didn't level it. But her burst, which is literally the core of her kit, that's what I leveled to the max. This goes true for any unit you use. You need to know exactly what you're going to be using them for and what you need to level. For a character like Xiao, his burst is the bulk of his damage. But if you look closely, his burst gives him a bonus towards his normal attacks, which means if your normal attack talent is low, his burst isn't going to help you very much, which is why I actually have his normal attacks leveled. Even though he isn't going to be on the field doing physical damage, his burst converts his attack damage into animo damage, and he does plunge damage. Plunge damage, if you look at his normal attacks, plunge damage. Low-high, plunge damage. It's in his normal attacks. So you want to level both. You also want to level his skill to make sure he's just doing damage on that. So there you go. So when it comes to leveling talents, you always want to level your talents as much as possible. Only the useful ones. Don't level anything that you're not going to use. Don't level anything that you're not going to need unless you want to. If you have it lying around and you choose to, no one can stop you. For a character like Diona, for example, I don't have her built, but this is just an example. She casts her skill, you get a shield. She casts her burst, you get healing. She's not going to be on field attacking. Diona is not a damage dealer, she is a support character. She gives you shields, she gives you healing. She is not here for damage. So there's no reason to level this. There's no reason to touch it. You don't need it, you're not using it. So you always want to make sure that you're leveling the relevant talents as much as possible, because at the end of the day, when you look at a character like Raiden Shogun, for example, look at her burst. This base damage, this 721%, this is 721% of her attack stat. As I mentioned before, if it doesn't specify, for instance, like Yelan's talents, if it doesn't specify what it scales off of, it scales off of your attack. So, for example, if we look at her normal attack, let's say for whatever reason, I want to do physical damage with Raiden Shogun. I want to just smack everything down with her spear. I'm not going to get very far. I may have all of this attack, but this is still a level 1 talent, and these multipliers are very low, which means they're only going to be taking very small percentages of all this attack that I built up with her weapon and her artifacts. This rings true for her burst. If I had her at a level 2 burst, it's not going to do nowhere near as much damage because it's not leveled enough. You want to level these up, it will increase these multipliers. Higher multipliers means higher damage output. And yeah, that's basically how you build a unit. You always want to, choose your unit, look at their talents, see what their talents do, see what their talents scale from, check everything. You don't want to leave anything out. You want to be well aware of what they do. You want to also look at your passive talents, because passive talents do matter. For characters like Ayaka, when you look at her passive talents, after she uses her skill, she gains a 30% increase to her normal and charged attacks. So basically, if you want to buff her normal and charged attacks, she would use her skill first, and then go in with her normal and charged attacks, and you will get 30% extra damage done from them. It's just a damage boost. When you look at this passive talent, from the cryo application at the end of Kamisato Art Senho, her dash, her alternate sprint, hits an opponent, she will restore 10 stamina and gain an 18% cryo damage bonus. So before you do cryo damage, like on her burst that deals cryo damage, this is the bulk of her kit. Before you do her burst, just dash and hit an enemy, and you'll gain an 18% cryo damage bonus. You'll just do more cryo damage. You unleash her burst, it will do the burst damage on top of a 18% cryo damage bonus. So it's important to know how these characters work, what exactly they do. That way you can build them to the best of their ability. So yeah, I hope this guide was helpful. I hope I explained everything right. I just hope it helps. And if it does, I would greatly appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up. Subscribe for more content, more guides, etc. Follow me on all my social medias. Link tree will be in the description down below. And I will see you all in the next video.